I was thinking of this equity stuff that Evergreen is into. They're really into this stuff called equity and inclusion. Of course, you know that. And they had like this equity and inclusion symposium, which is basically just the day of absence all over again. But it wasn't like nobody had to leave or go. But it was all the same stuff. It was all the same thing. One of their keynote speakers has developed this theory of post-slavery traumatic syndrome, or post-slavery trauma syndrome, or something like that. And I've been going through her videos and stuff. And I sent one of the videos, one of her lectures of this woman who does this post-slavery traumatic syndrome to Coleman Hughes. I'm hoping that he would watch it and get back to us with his thoughts, because this guy is a stellar writer and not even up-and-coming thinker at this point. Coleman Hughes, that is. He's mercurial in his rise. But anyways, I was watching through this woman's thing about, post-slavery traumatic syndrome, and I'm just like really irritated the whole time I'm watching it, because it doesn't make sense. The whole thing doesn't make sense. And the question is like, do I go through it line by line and like show how she's saying one thing and doing another, or saying that she's not doing something and doing the same thing that she's saying that she's not doing, like that she's not dismissing slavery, or that it's not that slavery, of course, is over, but it still persists with us through to this day. And anyway, so back to the Evergreen thing. They're still like full bore ahead with this equity and inclusion thing. I was thinking like the students should elect to participate in what I think is a cutting edge and avant-garde equity issue of the day, which is pornography, right? I think that multicultural masturbation should be something that you sign up for. Because when we go to the internet and nobody's watching us, mostly, and, you stumble around and you're like, oh, there's pornography, and then you just like enjoy pornography. More likely than not, you're probably like going to certain races. You're probably not being equitable with that which you lust after, right? So the Evergreen students, I believe, should sign up for like, equal time. Like when you enjoy the sight of the sexual activities of other people, you should distribute that over the races, and distribute that over the sexes, distribute that over, the weight categories, all the different intersectional categories. I think there should be intersectional pornography. And I think that, there's probably a business idea here. Like we could develop an algorithm that variates that which you find sexy, so that eventually you find that everything is sexy and you can orgasm to anything. That's just an idea. But what I was seriously, that might be like an Onion article that I was thinking of writing, but I ruined it. But maybe like, just between me and the 5 people watching this, and then we can go back to, I can work on this and like develop it into some sort of like authentic parody. But what isn't a parody at all? It's this Cooper Point Journal article. Now, I don't know exactly when this happened, but I believe at least a year ago, if not more, the Evergreen Police Department finally got rifles. They'd been asking for rifles for a while. And there's specific reasons why you want rifles as a police officer or campus police officer, and that is specifically in case of an active shooter, right? So somebody shows up on campus and starts mowing people down. Do you want officers to have handguns that can only have an accuracy? I'm going to get in so much trouble with all my gun nut viewers and friends, but what accuracy range is a handgun? Like 20 feet? 30 yards? I don't know. But a rifle has much more accuracy from much further away. So you have the rifles, you go up in your position, and you bing, bing, the shooter. But Evergreen, apparently, the Cooper Point Journal didn't learn about this until like this week. Or maybe a couple weeks ago. And they are throwing a hissy fit. This is a beautiful article. Now, I'm going to turn down my sound. Oh, crap. Technical stuff. I need you guys to tell me if I'm cutting, if my audio is nice and warm, but not too loud. Can you do that? Thanks, Heimdall. Hey, Joe, Dan. Hey, Great Old Oak. Blast those protesters. Yeah, well, I don't know if they're protesters anymore. Hey, Bill Barry. And Teddy Pal, it's nice to see you in the live chat. I would like to see your logic in real time. We really should only be processing our own narratives. You are such an interesting person. Someday I hope to talk to you. Anyways, how's my audio? Okay. Heimdall says it's all right. So I'm going to read this article. I'll try to read it fast or slow. You guys let me know. The Cooper Point Journal, apparently they got cut funding. So they have these ads. It's like some of the most disgusting ads I've ever seen. It looks like a dead, dried fish, like something from a Swedish, platter of yore, but it's just a clogged drain, but it really looks like a fish. Like it's just this knotted, rotted fish, but no, it's a clogged drain. So anyways, the Cooper Point Journal, they have ads now. They hadn't had ads before, but that shows you, the dire straits that at least this section of the college is in. And, I should mention this. Some enrollment numbers came out, and I can't pull them up because, my sources will be revealed. But if I recall correctly, Evergreen is now saying that there's 309 freshman students. They were saying that it was going to be 350, and there's 3,125 students total in the whole course, and they were aiming for 3,100. But the thing is that once I started looking into those numbers, it turns out that they're telling us the wrong numbers. They're telling us the numbers that don't count. They're telling us head count, a full head count. The only numbers that count is full-time enrollment. So if the full head count is 309 freshmen, 3,100 full, then the full-time head count is going to be much lower than that, and they're not going to release that. It's probably going to be 2,700. We don't know. We don't want to speculate about numbers. I was talking to somebody that I hope to interview, and actually I want to do a live stream with him because we talk and he's excellent. His name is Mike Peros, and he is he's an Evergreen professor. He's doing this amazing course, this absolutely amazing course. I can't even recall the name of the course, but he's assigning his students to pick a position that they disagree with and spend 10 weeks steel manning the opposite position that you believe. And week after week after week, he's scheduling people of all different varieties of viewpoints, and he's going through and he's engaging with the students in a way where a diversity of viewpoint is front and center. We're developing the ability to criticize, to be critical, and to be criticized doesn't necessarily result in some sort of violent panic attack or panic attack that you ascribe to being hurt by all these bad opinions or these harmful entities of noetical sort. Anyways, so Mike was talking to me. I lost my train of thought. Mike was talking to me. I lost my train of thought. This is a live stream, and I lose my train of thought. The thing about the videos that I do, I can just cut the train of thought loss out, and you guys think that I'm like a brilliant human being. Then I don't suffer from some version of early onset dementia or something like that. But no, I do. Mike was saying something awesome. I can't remember it. Oh, I remember it. All I need is a little bit of beer. IPA, my standard Fremont Interbroughton or Interurban. Mike was saying that even the roll count doesn't matter. Even if Evergreen succeeds as a social justice university, that begs the question of if, and I probably used that phrase wrong, if the social justice university is necessarily a good thing. Even if it's popular, does that make it right? Even if it's exploding with enrollment, does that necessarily make it a good thing? That's the question. Well, we don't know the answer to that in the case of Evergreen, and I'm going to use that as a segue into this beautiful article by, I don't want to say their name, but here's their name. I don't want to dox a student, poor guy. Police services have AR-15 rifles. President Bridges quietly approved purchase in 2017. So they're reporting on this a year later, and they're all in a tizzy. Emails obtained by the Cooper Point Journal and subsequent investigation show Evergreen's police services quietly purchased AR-15 semi-automatic rifles in 2017 without notifying the campus community. Hey guys, we have the rifles because, you guys need trigger warnings, right? And you're not easily triggered or anything, so we're just going to tell you exactly what we have, right? We have rifles. There's no way they're going to tell the hyperactive or hyper over-dramatic Evergreen community that they did what the community said that they didn't want, but that forces higher than the student body declared that they needed, or decided that they needed. On August 1st, 2017, then Director of Police Services, Stacy Brown. Stacy Brown's name is not spelled that way. And I'm going to call out the grammatical errors and the spelling errors so far as I see them, because this, again, it makes me wonder if this is not just an Onion article. This reads like an Onion article, especially later on. So we'll try to get to it later on. But anyways, her name is Stacy Brown with no E, and you're going to see this, that they start bagging on her, even though she's been gone for, 14, 15 months now. She was completely mistreated by the college, and she left. And they're still bagging on her. They still have like this raging, like mossy boner for her. And it's anybody's guess. On August 1st, 2017, then Director of Police Services, actually I think she was Chief of Police Services, but maybe that's a technicality, requested the purchase of AR-15 rifles for police services on campus in an email to college president George Bridges. On August 15th, let's mute the button just in case there's those weird sounds. On August 15th, despite Brown's subsequent resignation, Bridges granted her request. What do those two things have together? Even if she left, that doesn't mean that her request is invalid. 2 days later, he approved new rifle procedures. In one fell swoop, behind closed doors, Evergreen's Police Services had achieved a goal it had been doggedly pursuing in the face of mass community opposition since at least 2008. Brown's email called for the purchase of 5 semi-automatic rifles, projected to cost $12,000 in total, and continuing upkeep of $1,000 per year. Maybe you guys can fact check this for me. Does it cost $1,000 a year to keep 5 rifles in order? Maybe that includes practice rounds, or is the oil for these things really that special? Who knows? 4 of the rifles would be stored in patrol vehicles, with the 5th residing in the station. However, Police Services standard operating procedures allows all officers to use personally owned rifles in place of the ones issued to them, allowing for the potential of 10 additional rifles if each officer used their own. So, technically speaking, the officers already could have rifles. It just had to be their own. But he's got to pump the drama, right? The procedures also permit each on-duty patrol officer to carry a rifle in their vehicle, meaning that each police vehicle could have multiple rifles depending on the number of on-duty officers present. So I wonder if I could steel man. This is probably the kind of live stream that I need somebody who would be able to steel man the position of somebody who doesn't want rifles on campus. The thing is that Evergreen shat the bed. They called a lot of attention to themselves, so they are, for better or worse, kind of a target. I don't mean that threateningly at all, but they kind of put themselves on the map. And I don't even want to talk about this because I do not think that violence is okay in any way, but you have to be prepared for the worst. And if a shooter shows up and the police can't stop them, who gets the blame? The hippies don't get the blame. The people who rallied for this utopia do not get blamed when the utopia is violently violated by somebody who does not have the utopia's values at heart. However, the weird thing about this is that in creating this utopia, they're aggressively attacking everything that would actually protect them. Like I've said before, and I'm working on this freaking documentary, you see time and time again that the students are saying, we're not safe, we're not safe, we're not safe, fuck the police. Fuck the police, we're not safe. And there's historical and societal reasons for that and cultural reasons for that, but it's like with the Naima Lowe letter. They don't see the contradiction. They don't see the contradiction in those two things. Their position, it's like a superposition. It's I'm Schrodinger's illogical position. I want this thing, but I want to deny all the reality that surrounds achieving this thing. Or I don't want this thing, and I'm going to deny all the reality around me receiving this thing that I don't want. In the case of Naima Lowe, a bunch of angry letters because she was an angry woman. She was an angry person. And I used the term angry woman. I didn't say angry black woman. The only reason I said that is because she explicitly says that in her letter. Let's continue. Brown called for a plethora of changes, including additional officers, communication staff, and mandatory active shooter orientations for new students, faculty, and staff. So things that would, one, have more officers on the ground, two, communication staff so people would be better informed with what's going on, and three, that everybody would know how to act in the case of an emergency. Are those things necessarily negative? I don't know. In reading the Cooper Point Journal, I always assume that they're always trying to push a certain narrative. But this guy, whose name I shall not be mentioned, maybe he's new, I haven't seen him, so maybe he's got a different thing up his sleeve. So she asked for all these things, and then, this is why you don't sing. Okay. She requested crowd control equipment, including OC-10 pepper spray and pepper balls, modernized radio infrastructure, door locking systems, and alarms. Okay, I understand why you don't want pepper spray around, but like locking systems and alarms, something good. Brown also asked to expand campus surveillance systems beyond the current 55 cameras, including the addition of cameras to Red Square and body cameras for officers. Why would you not want body cameras for officers? I'm putting words in the author's mouth that he doesn't want all these things. But I do have to say that I've done a lot of records requests about Evergreen because I wanted to get as much footage as possible. And so I requested a bunch of like video camera footage, and basically all the video cameras that they have are directly like tied to financial transactions. Like wherever there's a register, they basically have like a camera, except in the Flaming Eggplant because they hate police and they hate surveillance. So I wonder at the reasoning of that. Maybe someday. My dream of dreams, the one thing that I'm being so obsessive about Evergreen is, one, because people keep watching it, two, because like it started, I have to finish it, three, I'm hoping to get Stacey Brown and like give you guys like the ability to actually see her position. We'll see if that works or not. But so I wonder specifically what her reasoning is for additional camera in Red Square. My first thought is that there's an awful lot of vandalism that happens on Red Square. Like if you have a spray can, a spray paint can, and like a really truncated slogan, and like a mean attitude, like you just end up on Red Square, like spraying something on Red Square. So I understand like why you'd want to prevent property damage, or at least be able to prosecute people who do property damage and send them a message. But okay, we can go all through this. This is live. I think this gets kind of boring here. So let's just skip ahead and just like chips fall where they may. Okay, so basically this part is that George Bridges, they do a bunch of research, and this is all the part where the people don't know what happened. Like all the administration is saying, "Oh, we don't know," or they don't say anything, or they're not being forthright enough. So the investigator goes to Brandon Ellington, a representative of the Geoduck Student Union, and it's actually called Geoduck, unlike Centre being called Center. It's just one of those things for like this particular culture. Geoduck is gooey duck, kind of like GIF and GIF are interchangeable, Centre, Center, whatever. So Brandon Ellington, who's a representative of Geoduck Student Union, confirmed he had not been consulted, saying, I love this, I should have had at least one significant conversation with administrators about this decision, which was made probably likely before he was actually elected. Like several major college initiatives, I feel quite left out. This doesn't sound like a representative. Like he's like a mopey representative. I don't know how far you're going to get in politics, Brandon. Steve Blakesley, chair of the Faculty Agenda Committee, confirmed the issue did not come before either the Agenda Committee or the faculty at large last year. Okay, and then they bring up the turmoil. They bring up that there's a threat from the New Jersey man. Okay, so after a few days after the protests, a guy called in and said that he was going to shoot everybody with the .44 Magnum. And it turned out he was in New Jersey. The last thing I heard, and nobody's followed up on this, and I've been waiting for all the facts, but he served 3 days in prison and is on 2 years of like mental probation or something like that, like a court elected psychologist or something like that. So he's been chastised. He actually didn't own any weapons. He wasn't a direct threat to the college, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't take threats seriously, right? Okay, this is a good part. Former academic budget dean Ken Tubbett, it's Tabbitt, did a back-of-the-napkin calculation in a 2009 email to faculty responding to an earlier rifle proposal, concluding that the probability of an event involving a shooter happening on a specific campus each year is px 0.0003, or once in every 3,140 years. Okay, what's the probability of you getting in a car accident? And what does that have to do with like you wearing a seatbelt or not, right? We still wear a seatbelt. I mean, I understand that logic. I'm trying to see the reflexive attitude towards not having rifles. It's not like the police are going to go around shooting you. Anyways, they'll get to that. To quote Budget Dean Tubbett, I'm not implying that an event only happens every 3,140 years. There may very well be an active shooter on the same campus 2 years in a row, or even in the same year, said Tubbett. Like, look at this guy. He can't even it's been one thing. This is a journal. It is just an attempt to put the probability of these events in perspective. Sarah Boucher, a student worried that perceptions of Evergreen students as scary and crazy after the 2017 protests may have played a part in the decision. Are they for us or are they for intruders? She wondered. Like, seriously, the student wondered if the rifles are for the students or for the intruders. Like, what do you guys think? What do you guys seriously think? Are these rifles for students or intruders? She wondered. It makes me think of like some sort of like panel in a comic. Another student, HL, said, it seems like these rifles were purchased in defense of Evergreen as an institution instead of in defense of the students. The institution doesn't exist if there are no students. Like, there's like basic logic here. The campus is a safer place than it was, insisted Kaiser, vice president of public relations. I would say that we have really good law enforcement officers on campus. They're very highly trained. They really care about the people on this campus. This stands in direct contradiction of the testimony of many community members who brought up instances of concerning behavior and misconduct on the part of Evergreen police. I'm not totally close to police services, but I'm kind of close to the police services, and I really feel that these are stand-up people, and like these feelings, these concerning behaviors and misconduct are probably not sufficient enough for anybody to actually file a report. It's just a general attitude among the student body, for better or worse. And this is a part of the culture of Evergreen, and it's gone back for a number of years. It's not just this current crop of students. And we do have to remember that the protests happened a year and a half ago. A lot of students that were involved in that aren't there anymore. Kay Kovac, a student and former residential assistant. I know a residential assistant who was not exactly a shining example of upright behavior. We'll get to into the documentary. Said, police would come in and stand there with their hands on their gun belts and just hover. And that he was worried they might use their weapons. Like, they're not just going to start firing at things. Vavris recounted that officers in spring 2008 in charge of taser trainings chased and inebriated students to the forest and tasered that student. I wonder if the student was doing anything to deserve that. Possibly vandalism or assault. Police don't just run after drunk people and shoot them with tasers. They don't do that. He also underlined a May 13th, 2009 incident where Officer Brewster threatened to taser participants of a street theater performance on campus if it went too far. See, there's not enough context for me to wonder, like to know, but that just makes me wonder what's being called street theater performance, because in a manner of speaking, I think like one very solid interpretation of the entire protest was that is basically performance. It was basically just like a performance art. It was street performance. But anyways. Okay, and then, of course, HL said, as a person of color, I must say, yes, people of color are in particular risk of fatal injury when police are involved. That's a weird statement. He's probably talking about statistics, but it just doesn't grok for me, like that there's a particular risk of fatal injury when police are involved. If you leave out like what is actually happening, like that strips out what is actually happening from the shootings. And I'm not very well versed in officer shootings. I probably should be much more well versed because Black Lives Matter is a huge component of the Evergreen protests, and I should like actually like bone up on that. If you guys know of anybody who's very well versed in that and who's reasonable and can like help us all learn more about police shirtings. Like, I gotta change, guys. That would be great to have. I'll do research and try to find somebody to like really learn better. Black and brown people endure the possibility of brutal force when police are present. Full stop. These are officers at a seemingly progressive institution, but this does not absolve them from implicit biases, whatever that means, regarding race, which are so pervasive in our society. So pervasive. Another cool thing about Mike Parris's class is that he's explicitly researched implicit bias, just from what I've heard. Apparently, it's a very fascinating thing, but it's not as explicit. This implicit bias is not as explicit, or the judgment that we are supposed to have about implicit bias is not as explicit as one would suppose, especially when they try to politicize it. They concluded, you have to consider who's the most vulnerable at Evergreen. That's for these reasons, HL declined to give their name. You have to consider who's the most vulnerable at Evergreen. Anybody who's a fleshy individual in case of an active shooter is equally vulnerable. Nobody is more or less vulnerable in the case of an active shooter unless the active shooter has explicit racial things going on, which I don't know what percentage of active shooters have like specifically gone after certain races. They just show up and start plowing things, right? I don't know. I feel like I'm on shaky territory, so let's reel it back in. And skip ahead. Oh, we're almost done. Officers with police services deferred comment to the college's public relations department, which did not respond on their behalf in time for press. The public relations department is wonderfully apt at not getting back to you. Actually, the head of the public relations department, it's impossible to even find her email unless you're a student. Like, you go to her webpage and it's like you have to log in to find her email. It's kind of weird. Anyways, the public relations department is about just planting articles in various newspapers, not so much asking questions to anybody who they don't have to answer questions for. I'm messing up my words. I appreciate your patience. Kaiser repeatedly answered pointed questions concerning procurement of rifles by deflecting to the report of the independent external review panel, which assessed the college following campus protests in 2017 and declining enrollment. I did a whole episode on the independent external review panel. If you guys want to find it, it's called The Perks of Being a Perpetrator. I think it's a pretty good episode. But I go through that and I talk about the independent external review panel and how they basically absolved the officers of doing any actual wrongdoing during the protests. While it did recommend, this review panel report did recommend wide active shooter trainings, increased funding and support for police services, as well as minimizing use of force, the report did not contain any specific mentions of rifles. What do you think wide active shooter trainings means? Like, if there's an active shooter on campus, you're not going to go after them with a handgun. It's better to have somebody with a rifle. So it would be cool if this guy steelmanned his behavior. So from going through this whole article, I don't really feel like he has defined his position on why rifles are wrong, other than people feel that they're bad, or we don't want so many guns on campus, or like there's a high likelihood that people will be shot if they're involved in a violent activity with the police officer, which just makes sense to me. But I don't have like a sense that he went deep into the distrust of rifles or armed police in this day and age. Other than that, every public campus, at least in Washington, does have rifles, right? It's standard that every campus in Washington state that's state-owned has a police force. The police force is kind of semi-independent. It reports to the college. Like, it doesn't report to the city or the state or the governor so much as it reports to the college. Like, they're their own police departments. And that's something that goes back into the history of Washington and shooters and stuff like that. But this guy doesn't go into that. So I have my feelings. He's got his feelings. I wonder what your feelings are. The report did, however, call on administrators to ensure the college, quote, restores a sense of trust and transparency among campus constituencies and increases opportunities for campus-wide engagement with the issues. So I guess he's upset that he wasn't consulted before the police armed themselves with rifles. It recommended active in-person presence of leadership with the faculty, staff, and students, and frank communication and bold leadership. You know what? Stacey Brown was probably the perfect police officer for Evergreen, if only they weren't so anti-police and apparently sexist, too. Because they've given this Ed Croger no flack whatsoever, but they still go after Stacey Brown, and they misspell her name, even a year and months after she's gone. The report warns that not implementing these changes risks, quote, a deterioration of the fabric of the campus community, characterized by feelings of mistrust and exclusion from the administration. Is this a threat? Because I don't think that the student body, at least the Cooper Point Journal, their relationship with the campus, with the fabric of the campus community, or their feelings of mistrust and exclusion from the administration can progress any further than they have. Like, it's maximally distrustful. It's maximally slanderous. This is the best part of the whole thing. Webmaster's note: a previous version of this article used incorrect pronouns for K. Kovac. Wonderful little article. Not as funny as I thought, not as funny as I hoped. I'm going to jump into this comment chat stream, which is impossible for me to do. I need to hire somebody to, come in. Heinlein, stranger in a strange land, land of ice and stone. What are we doing? I'm configuring a dossier of all the stuff that I've collected on Evergreen, screenshots, emails, public records requests, videos. I'm starting to organize the whole thing. That's why my output, I believe, is going to take a steep drop in the next few weeks as I try to get this all together. And then, I'm putting everything together and I'm kind of shaping it and kneading it. But I totally have this feeling that there's so much that I don't know about documentary filmmaking. There's so much that I don't even know I don't know. I don't know, which information I should put first. Should I be the narrator? Should I narrate? Should I just have it self-narrated? I've been aligning and cutting, all the footage and all of the different interviews that I've done to kind of make a cohesive whole. But, I need to understand, I need to, figure out what people need to know at the beginning. And then I have to figure out what they need to know, and then how do I frame that, right? They need to know about Day of Absence. They need to know about Brett Weinstein. They should end up knowing about Naima Lowe as you go on, but any given narration is going to frame everything in a particular way, and I don't even know how to frame that to begin with. Not to mention all the graphic effects and the cuts and the pans and stuff, and then I worry furthermore about if I go after this as a professional thing, and I don't really want to make money off of it other than people donating money for me making it, because if I'm selling it, or if I treat it as a commercial property, then I'll probably get in trouble somewhat for using a bunch of found footage, right? I don't have the copyright stuff. So there's a lot of different overhead things, and then there's a lot of depth of the material and stuff. And then people are pushing me to actually write a book. And that is something that I'm scared of doing. I don't want to write anymore. I wrote too much in my life. Una, who used to be my roommate. This is a Fremont Ale. It's an IPA. I could ask Naima for help on filmmaking. I've been thinking a lot about Naima this week since reading her message, and I've gone through, or her write-up, and I've gone through and I looked back through the email chains, and there's one particular professor that always shows up right after Naima Lowe does and praises Naima Lowe, and then starts to talk about about her own white fragility and how she needs to unlearn her privileges and unlearn her whiteness. And I was reading it the other day. I was going to do an episode on it, but like the timing wasn't right to do an episode on this, and I need more material. But I just had like a physical reaction, like a not like disgust, but like this terrible feeling. Just reading this professor's words, like it just gave me this really culty vibe. And I've been trying to figure out, like, what is that culty vibe that I get from like this whole allyship thing, right? One of the patterns that I see in the Evergreen protests is that the protesters, they act like bullies and then they play victims, right? And it starts small. Like with on Facebook, Jamil and Kiave, like they start having this bully thing, right? Well, you're victimizing me, so I'm going to act like a bully, and then I'm going to play a then I'm going to play a victim, and then I'm going to act like a bully, then play a victim and act like a bully. And it's like, did you guys ever go to like a water park where there's like that surf place where everybody goes in and it starts really slow, right? Like this wave starts really slow, and it vacillates or it oscillates between being a bully, playing a victim, being a bully, playing a victim, and then you get to the protests where the protesters, I found footage that I hadn't seen before because the stream of the footage of the protests after the Brett Weinstein incident, like something is wrong with the codec, so I've like figured out how to like get more video out of that. And the students are like, they're scared of the cops, and then they mock the cops, right? And then they mock Brett Weinstein for calling the cops, and then the next thing we know, they're complaining how the cops came after them and stormed the campus like troopers, like SS troopers, and like they were threatening to mace everybody. But if you actually look at the footage, the police are like, they had like, there's 2 extra cop cars, and they're very carefully like just assessing the situation. There's no actual confrontation between the protesters and the police whatsoever. But the next thing you know, they have this whole narrative already cooked up where they're lying already. And it goes back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And just thinking about like that movement between being a bully and playing a victim, being a bully playing a victim, right? Like, and the phrase is a cry bully. But it's very explicit throughout the whole protest. Like, how does that help us make sense of what an ally is, what a white ally is? And one thing that happens like very blatantly throughout the first day of protest is that the black students say, white people, and then order the white people around. White people, white people. It's this weird thing. I don't think many people have seen this on the footage because it's something that always happens off camera. But why do white people, so-called, put themselves in the position of being ordered around by the black people, so-called? And then why does a white professor, a white so-called professor, defer and grovel at the feet of a quote-unquote black professor? Why does Lisa Sweet, the professor, swoop in whenever Naima says her thing and then praise Naima and then flagellate herself in front of everybody? Or like punch at Brett? There's this email exchange where sorry, I got distracted. There's this email exchange where about the day of absence emails with Brett Weinstein, and Lisa Sweet comes out. Lisa Sweet's a professor. I did an episode way back when on her. Lisa Sweet comes in and says, it's not that you're using the email to like assault the campus. It's not that you're being like, it's not that you're like being rude, and it's not like you're being abusive, and it's that you're providing cover for people like me to not see like our own whiteness, and you're blocking us from unlearning the patterns of privilege that we hold. And I think that the entire framework of what we see at Evergreen is it's all framed within the bully victim narrative, which is the oppressed oppressor narrative. Every unit, every person who enters into that assumes the bully victim dichotomy in some way. With the black protesters, they act bullies, play victims, act bullies, play victims. They get more power being a victim, and then they act as a bully, and then they get more power as a victim because for whatever reason they can't be shut down when they're in victim mode. Pardon this. But I think the same dynamic is going on inside of the white allies, where they take on the position of bully and victim at the same time. They've been victimized, or they act victimized by their implicit bulliness, right? They're white. They're superior, therefore they're superior, historically speaking. I'm not saying whites are superior. I'm saying that they've taught themselves that there's an essentialist nature to them being white, that they have so much power that they do not deserve, and they need to pay reparations. So they are at once bullies and victims at the same time. And so they start to pay reparations through emotional labor, through obedience, through money, not so much money, but basically servitude. In the moment, they pay reparations for their grave original sin. What's that word, Catholics? I've been trying to think all day about this word. Right, where there's no redemption whatsoever. In the Catholic framework with purgatory. And I'm slaughtering that. I know that redemption still exists in grace and all that stuff. But during the medieval times, at a certain point, the Catholic Church decided to charge people to get their ancestors and themselves out of purgatory, right? And they paid basically they paid reparations for their sins in real time. And so once an institution or another person gets in the way between you and what I want to call God, but I don't want to disturb anybody, but between you and redemption, between you and evolution, between you and becoming a better person or a broader person or expanding your influence and your awareness. If once any person starts to latch a hold of that between your relationship with yourself and that which is, and starts, it's like they act like a parasite and they begin to leech off of the inherent kind of anxiety that we all have as creatures who are developing. We would never develop if we didn't have anxiety to be something better, right? But that anxiety can be turned into guilt, and then that guilt can be used for other people to leech resources out of you, whether it's attention or actual resources or your obedience. Thanks, Heimdall. You know what, Heimdall? This isn't a reference. This is directly talking to Stranger in the Strange Land. There's this one part in Heinlein, this science fiction writer who invented the word grok, and he wrote this really long book. Well, I read the unexpurgated version of it, called Stranger in a Strange Land. And if I recall correctly, it's like this Martian, or it's this human being who gets sucked up into Mars, and he learns all these tricks on Mars, and then he gets spat back on Earth, and he's like this alien. He's got like superpowers, but just because he's like hyper conscious. But there's this one passage in the book where this character, this alien who's a human, but he's an alien because he grew up on Mars. He's very naive. It's a perfect character to just explore contemporary issues, to have this hyper aware, hyper naive character. And there's just this one part that I always think about every once in a while, not always, where Heinlein, it's a sexy book. There's a lot of sexuality in the book. It's stuff that would not fly in the Me Too era, because women are basically very hypersexual entities in this book, as far as I remember it. But the character wonders why, when a woman puts on a smell or a perfume that doesn't come from her, the smell somehow makes her more her. And I wonder about that. My girlfriend, she takes. Don't tell her this. Don't tell her that I told you. Don't tell anybody that I told you this. But sometimes, like, it takes her a while to get dressed, and it's funny. Like she's like figuring out, like, do I dress this way? Do I dress that way? Do I dress this way? Do I dress that way? And she's going through different outfits to figure out just the right one. And I've watched her for several years do this, and it feels like she's attenuating herself to the day. So she has an image of what the day is going to bring, and she's highly intuitive. she's very highly intuitive. She has this image in her mind of what the day is going to be, or likely going to be. And she has a feeling in herself of where she's at. And it seems like the clothing is a way for her to enter into a mediation between her inside and the outside. Right. And that's like, it's almost like a meditation for her. Not a meditation, but like a contemplation and getting herself in order. And I think about the Heinlein quote about like, how is it that human beings have this capacity to take things in the natural world that don't come from us, but when we put them on ourselves, it makes us more somehow. And I wonder if, and like with fashion and with art and with spirituality and religion and different ways that we've developed these articles, these superfluous articles that somehow unleash or allow us to be more present with each other and more recognizable to each other as this and that. And I wonder if identity politics isn't somehow a corruption of fashion. I wonder if it isn't somehow like how there's a good anxiety that forces you forward, and then there's guilt which holds you back. I wonder if there's something in identity that's gone rotten or gone sour within identity politics, where it's no longer like a releasing or an actualization of myself in the world. Right? I have my individuality, but my individuality cannot be realized until I make something or I'm recognized as something to somebody. I have to like somehow snap into a position. Right, which is inherently uncomfortable, and yet it's more real than anything else. But in the game of identity politics, when we start to take these different characteristics, these immutable characteristics, and they're used somehow as determinant of what I am, what I can be, what I can't be. And I was in a Facebook argument on the Evergreen alumni page about the Naima Lowe article. And people, like, I probably failed, like, stating my case, trying to say that, she's playing a victim, but she was really a bully. And I started to bring up snapshots of different emails, and the person who was defending her kept on, like, batting those away. Oh, that's just anecdotal evidence. How can you put, like, her emails on the same level as, like, these horrific racist emails? I'm like, well, they're both racist, right? But anyways, like, there was this, I watched this person try to discount me in all these different ways, and then eventually it just came down to that I'm white, and I'm centering myself here. I'm no longer making a point. I'm exerting my own worth here as a white person, and somehow by criticizing Naima Lowe's behavior, I'm denying her humanity. That's almost a direct quote, like that nobody should ever question somebody's humanity. I'm like, I'm not questioning her humanity. I'm questioning her posturing as this and that. I'm going off. I'm gonna wind down. I'm glad you guys all are here. I wonder how many people are here. Just 86 people. 87. I'm gonna wind down. Boring little episode. I'm going to keep this live overnight and then hide it in the morning because it's not my best work. I wish this was in realer time so I could have a conversation with you guys, but do you have anything you guys want me to talk about or think about? I'm reading your chats now. I'll probably think of something soon. Medium Giant. The identity politics and the critiques of identity politics both make me feel bad. But I'm addicted to this shit. The world is a bad place. Do you ever feel crazy talking so much about this stuff? Do I ever feel crazy about talking about this stuff? It's kind of weird, isn't it? It's kind of mucky. I do feel weird about it. I have a job that gets me out, and I hang out with kids for about 5 hours a day, and it kind of flushes this stuff out of my head. But especially assembling the documentary, like I'm going through the protests over and over and over again. I don't know how many hours of footage I have. I want to say I probably have about 10 hours of footage maybe, and I'm going over and over and over it again through it. And there's certain parts of it where where the protesters are acting in a way that they're completely misbehaving. And sometimes I feel that does stick to me, in a way, but I don't want to get too introverted and stuff. The last time I went on campus, it was in January. They had a speaker who, I did an episode on this. I think it's called Injustice for Some. And this constitutional lawyer came on and said how important free speech is, except certain people shouldn't have so much free speech. It was ridiculous. But I decided to go there, and I hadn't gone there for a while. This was back in January. And the day before I went there, I had a dream. I had a dream that I was making all these videos, and I had to go back to this place. And in the dream, I didn't understand what it was, but I had to go back to this place, and something really dark had happened at this place. And it was really scary. And I had kind of footage, because I was a YouTube star in my dream, whatever, right? And I was doing all these episodes, and then my muse came in. My muse is a little girl, and she came in, and she started playing with the photography equipment and allowing me to jump through different videos in order to be kind of protected from this darkness that I had to go back to and visit. And I ended up back in this place, and there was this feeling of of very tangible evil, but everything was painted over with stucco, and the buildings had been malformed by what had happened in this place, but everything was covered over, and everybody was pretending nothing had happened. And it was a really strong dream. And it wasn't and then later that night I go to Evergreen, and I kind of confront my feelings there, and I go and I go through there. And it wasn't until a week later that I made the connection that dream was about Evergreen. So there is certainly, I say all that because there is certainly a energetic vibrational thing, right? There's sorry to be hippie, but there's a psychological residue that accrues within me when by interacting with this stuff over and over and over again, and I watch it slowly start to erode my charisma. Actually, the tonality of my being starts to change, and I start to get more and more acidic or acerbic, more and more snarky, and so I need to flush that out to remain myself. So yeah, in a way, yes, it does certainly affect me. But at the same time, it's what people want to watch, and I can't just play kids music all the time. Nobody wants my kids music. I mean, the people who want it, right? But it's a different game. So it's interesting, and something that I constantly check in about and think about. Can I do, Zemi Zimmerman wants me to do an episode simply on identity politics versus individuality. That'd be a good, that'd be good. Maybe that will be what me and Elsvoid talk about, and try to look through that. That's actually a really good idea for an episode. I think that's something I want to have a conversation about. I think that might be something we could explore. So I'm going to write that down. Mr. Ed, meanwhile in China, universities, everyone has no interest in genders. No, they don't. I don't have a pen here. Damn it. Okay. Identity versus individuality. Thank you, Medium Giant. I love your profile picture. Teddy Pal, I think it's your subconscious telling you that you're going in the wrong direction. Yeah. Wait. I don't even know what you're talking about. Unique bird, and in the safe space bind them. Exactly. Where the intersections lie. In the intersectionality where the intersections lie, or something like that. Rogue Scoundrel, you used to sing around Olympia. I wonder why things didn't really happen for me there. I wonder. Where are you now, Rogue Scoundrel? And are things happening wherever you are? Seekman, no, I'm not a preschool teacher now. I don't have the time to do preschool teaching. I'm doing something related to a local grammar school right now. It's kind of part-time. Teddy Pal wonders who the young girl is, though. See, this is the weird thing about doing this totally fresh live stream thing and dumping into the comments. I don't know what you guys are talking about. Gender space battleship. Gender identity is crazy to me. Most people identify with their occupation. You know what, Space Battleship? I did a poem on this. I did a poem about a guy. Okay, I have this whole crazy world in the books that you see behind you that I've written. And there's this place in the Middle Age. It's like right in the middle of time, and everybody is there's like 24 men and 1 woman in this town, in this middle-aged town, and all the men are named after their profession. Like there's the butcher and the baker and the hunter and the sculptor and the vicar and so on and so forth, right? And then there's the servant girl. And the servant girl is the only one who's actually alive. Everybody else is just working. She's the only one who's aware. But the problem with being aware is that she has to suffer all the things that the men don't suffer. Like the men, she exists in the men's blind spot, right? And that is where their pain is, and their consciousness is, right? In a way, like their deep consciousness, not their subconsciousness. Anyways. And what happens to the hunter is that the hunter goes, and his job is to go and get like meat, and he brings it back, gives it to the butcher. But one day the hunter gets lost, right? And the hunter like opens up like his whole poem, his whole story about how he turned into a centaur by like talking about by making fun of our era and making fun about like gender pronouns and making fun of identity, because like for the hunter, the only thing that is real is what you do. Like the only identity that you have is what you create or what you do. That is the only solid, true, provable actuality of your identity, is your effect on the world. Everything else is suppositions, emotive, manners of dress, and denotive niceties of pronoun usage, which to my ears are confusive, based not upon objectively apprised and anchored qualities, such as what one accomplishes. 'Tis shifty ground all them wishes, free for sure to turn on dimes. But lo, I speak of simpler times. I'm quoting him now. Anyways, I went off on a tangent there. Santa Bacon. I'm glad my CSU wasn't an intersectional whole, even though it was in the San Francisco Bay Area. Oh, Teddy Pal, you're talking about the little girl. Someday you guys will meet her. If you rifle around the stuff that I don't produce anymore, my poetry stuff, she's in there. She's always in there. This is her book, actually. Can you guys see this? This is her book. It's available on my Patreon as a PDF. You can meet her there. This is the second book in the series. The first book in the series is not done yet. And she's got a big role to play in here until she has to go away, because there's certain things that the little girl should not interact with. Anyways, I'm not going to talk about my art anymore. I'm done with my art. Turned your ear. Which books? I only see a box of beer. Oh, Unique. I really like you on Twitter. He was asking about your young girl. Okay, yeah. What's the story there? I've had dreams about her for a long time. And she's like, she spoke to me once while I was laying in my bed, but I wasn't asleep. No, she spoke to me twice. One time she told me not to go down a certain road, and one time she told me that it was okay that I existed. And I think both those times were something that I needed to hear. So whether or not she's real or not doesn't really matter, especially in the world of fiction. The symbols that I've created, I did a lot of research in the archetypal stuff, like the Jungian stuff. This is back in the late 90s when I kind of came of age, and I decided to do like my education. My real education was used bookstores and cafes. And I got into the archetypal stuff, but just enough to see that I was on the right track. Like with Jung, he talks about the shadow. Before I ever came across Jung, I'd already been like writing about my shadow and like following him on certain adventures. And this is the book of the shadow, and this is the book of the little girl, the muse, right? But they have a different relationship. Anyway, I'm not going to get into my art. I'm just going to say that what I really wanted to do, and what I spent like 2 decades trying to do, is to develop my own system of archetypes. Because I think that archetypes are a novel way of making sense of the world. I don't know how to necessarily translate those archetypes into a common tongue. That's the problem that I have with archetypal language, religious language. It's like, okay, there's the personal archetypes, and then there's the communal archetypes. And how do you have communal archetypes that are not that are basically have a firewall from being hijacked by bad actants and by bad actions. And then people will use your archetypes. Basically, once you start to program yourself with archetypes, you become hackable, basically. You become legible, right, and understandable, but you also become hackable. If you don't have archetypes, if you don't have like a rich metaphorical internal life, your life's kind of drab. So I wouldn't say don't have archetypes. You're going to have them anyways, but they're easily hackable. And it's not a problem that I have with Peterson. I don't know. I think Peterson has the propensity to be manipulative. I think that Peterson has the propensity to actually hack into people's brains. And because he's studied this stuff, he's studied rhetoric, he's studied psychology, he's studied the archetypes. He's playing with fire, basically. I don't not trust him, but I am wary of him, but not as wary as all his detractors are. Like his detractors actually, they keep on backfiring because they don't really totally understand they don't really understand what he's doing, because he's speaking on a whole nother level. He's speaking on a narrative level. And that's the thing is, it's going to take me another 10 or 15 years. I'm going to have to go through this whole social justice thing, this whole identity politics thing, this whole evergreen thing, prove myself, figure out where people are right now. This is like, this whole project that I'm doing on YouTube is me learning how to connect with people in real time. Whereas before, all my art's just me trying to connect with the past, me and trying to connect with myself. But all this stuff is connecting with people. Eventually, I can foresee, if I survive, me trying to build something, my dream is to build a crossroads for fiction, or a concert hall for all of the dreams, all of the mystical symbols, right? All religions, like a translation device, a way, and it's not a map, but it's a way of speaking. It's a way of relating to other people, where you can translate where you are to where they are, and attend to them, and then meet and make connection. Which, I don't know. That's a total dream. But I'm a hippie. I went to Evergreen. That's that. It is 7:09. Downtown Olympia is getting pretty rough, says PPJ0241. I think it is pretty rough too. I do not go down there. I go down there as little as possible. I only go into town to shop. I live on an island, or I go down to Portland. I should go up to Seattle and meet up with people there. But so I don't have like direct, constant contact with downtown, but it is kind of sketchy. It's kind of grungy. Morals and Dogma, who's got a lovely Arabic name that I cannot read, says Jordan B. Peterson got to be a first-degree Mason after his anti-Kavanaugh tweet. I wonder what that means. Somebody in the comments went off on Jordan Peterson, said that he's a sellout now. They had a very convincing argument, but it was very specious at the same time. Unique Bird says, I like where your head goes on the archetype hackable thread. Myself working in the emerging social innovation world. Unique Bird, I just have a feeling that I want to have a conversation with you sometime. Whether online or offline, we should Skype sometime. Hit me up on Twitter. I'm curious what a emerging social innovation world is. Like, how do you be socially innovative? That's the thing I think about Evergreen. I think that Evergreen was really cutting edge in a lot of ways. I think people bag on Evergreen, but I think that the protests really show that there's something very, very ahead of its time about Evergreen. And I was joking on Twitter that Evergreen is basically the XKCD of wokeness. Like anything that we find in the world of wokeness, something at Evergreen will have already been there. Like I could probably pull footage or like emails or something like that and show that it's all already there. It's all already been read. Which makes it just such a perfect story. I found out that Tucker Carlson's book and Glenn's Glenn Beck's book both reference evergreen. So this story is really big. It has an impact. I know those guys are both right-leaning. I wish that more people from the left side would really take a hard look at that, especially people who are true leftists, who aren't identitarian politics leftists, but like the socialist left, the Bernie Sanders left, the intellectual left, like really take a very strong gander at evergreen and see where their ideas might have folded into that, or where their ideas are safe from that. Like, it's not my job to do that for them, but I see that the infection of intersectionality is running rampant in the left, and it's not running rampant in the right, though identitarian politics still has a certain foothold in the right. Oh, look at that. I'm wearing my shirt. You guys should buy my t-shirt. It's all on my other things. I will make women's sizes. I will make more colors if you guys want. Buy my merch. I'm sorry. I said that. Don't buy my things. Unless you want to support me. That'd be great. Greg Wolf says, have year-long courses really allow for deeper treatment of curriculum? They do. God damn it. I'm not tuning my own horn. Evergreen is the only place where you're going to be able to write a master's thesis as a Bachelor of Arts. In your undergrad, write a master's thesis on literature that's 725 pages, 250,000 words, that combines every formal genre of literature and tries to make a cohesive whole out of it. Evergreen's the only place where you're going to be able to get away with this. Evergreen's also the only place that you're going to get away with smoking dope on a lawn and getting credits for that somehow. So, it allows for anything, nothing and everything at the same time. So it is very novel, and that's one of the things that I think is actually the true tragedy of this. I was speaking with somebody who shall not be named, but probably somebody that every one of you know, at least know mention of. And this person had a theory that Evergreen started with an innovative school that gave unlimited freedom to the faculty. And what ended up happening on that, with that, is that you had a small number of innovators, a small number of activists, and then a large number of lazy people, or people who just showed up and do their job, just showed up and do the work, show up and do the work. And that's basically my experience. You have teachers who are activists, teachers who just are there, and every once in a while, and there are a few teachers who are very highly innovative. Now, in the activist game, sorry, I need to drink this. Now, the innovators want to innovate, right? The activists want power. So the activists eventually win the lazy people, or the people who are, I think lazy is not the right term, indifferent people. People who are just going through their route slowly become more and more activist in word and deed, because it's more trouble to argue with the activists than it is to just let them do their thing and carry on with your business. The innovators get more and more with trouble, but what happens in the end is that the activists take over, shove out the innovators, because the innovators are the ones who are threatening the activists' control over this institution. Now, that's just the theory. I think it's kind of novel. It's kind of a novel way of viewing that, way of viewing freedom, actually, way of viewing anarchy, actually. In a commune, in an anarchist collective, you're going to have people who work, right? Normal people who work. Every once in a while have a good idea. They just work. You have people who are, they're ideologically driven, right? They're ideologically driven. They're the purists. And then you have people who are tinkering, who are innovating. You're saying, what can we do new? What can we do new? What can we do new? And I bet time and time again, I wonder if we can map this onto other cults. Time and time again, the people who are ideologically driven end up taking over. The people who are innovatively driven end up getting run out, because the innovators have to look at the world in a different way. And the ideologically driven cannot afford for the world to be looked at in any other way than their way. Right? And then the workers just go along until they get burnt out and start feeling icky, and then they head out. I wonder how to map that. Thank you all for showing up on this lovely Monday night. I did 1 hour and 8 minutes and 17 seconds. And there's 97 people looking at me now, so maybe I should keep on talking. People, keep on talking. Black Knight Fool. SJW behavior is the same as religious behavior. The way they chant like mindless drones. Safe spaces are really just safe spaces for the ideology. No one is allowed to challenge you in the safe space. I do want to make a contention with religious behavior. I think that there's an overlap between social justice and religion, but it's a corrupt religion. It's a satanic religion. They're not all religions. Belief, we are not made, I'm going to quote myself, like a fucking pretentious asshole. Do I have a scarf? Okay, here we go. I'm going to quote myself. All right, here we go. Do I have the book? There's the freaking book. Okay. This is from the Book of Volition. Better than overturning one dogma with its inverse would be to open up all our orthodoxies by proving this: that we are not made to believe belief. Belief is made by us to make our lives full of being, thus belying belief, a fleeing from being, and our lives lies, if belief lies not in being, making, but in what is already made believed. That's a thick thing. I can't really unplug you for that. But I definitely think that we're not going to be able to escape from religion. We are not going to be able to escape from belief as such. We are believing creatures. We are creatures who imagine things, and then we need to stabilize those imagined things into something concrete or concrete enough. And that concretization of our imagination is belief. We're not going to be able to get away with that. We're always going to be positing something. And that something, the more imaginistic it is, the more beautiful it is, the more archetypal it is, the more dramatic it is, the more people are going to invest their belief into it. So we have these structures of belief that exist purely as the investment of attention. This is the only thing that I've ever thought of that's my own, that I think of as my own, is that we pay our attention into belief structures. Now, I don't think we're going to escape from needing to pay attention into things. And furthermore, to collectively pay our attention into things. Now, you only have to tithe a little bit of belief in a religious structure that is designed in such a way that allows community and allows individuality. It has space for the communal, space for the individual. And you only have to tithe a little bit of your attention into that system in order to connect with people and then go back and have a good life. And to have a certain number of values imprinted in you through paying your attention to this belief that you end up having a good life, right? You don't lie, you don't cheat, you don't steal, and then you're around people who don't do those things too, right? It has a cumulative good effect. Belief, however, can be hacked. It can be corrupted, right? And people pay their belief into it, and it becomes a cult is a belief structure that causes the community to leech more and more individuality from each one of its members, more and more energy from each one of its members, and that energy starts to be collected into a centralized place. I think maybe we can say that Marxism and socialism, and at least in the imaginary sense, or like in a very weak critique of Marxism, is that it's trying to centralize, the means of production. Well, a cult is trying to centralize the memes of production. It tries to centralize, usually into one character or into one way of acting. And that's the one thing that I still don't understand about intersectionality, and maybe I need to look more into Marxism to understand that, is that the format of the intersectional cult is such that does it have a central character or not? Does it have a cult leader or not? Is it something that doesn't need... Can it decentralize that leadership role into some sort of self-policing governing body? Well, it can't, because what we see in intersectionality if you look on Twitter, if you look on public discourse, what we see is that circular firing squad, the left eating its own, so-called. There's no central figure that's shooting everybody. Everybody else is policing everybody else and killing everybody else because nobody can be pure enough, and everybody wants to be pure and pure and pure. But it doesn't necessarily seem like it has room or space for a central individual, and maybe that is at once its weakness and its strength. Maybe it's something that's not like a beast or a creature, an entity. Maybe it's like a virus or a bacteria, where the locus of control is somehow shared between every unit of holographic. The user of the belief system becomes like a shard in a holographic mirror, right? Where it holds a whole bunch of information and then shares all that information, the same information, with everybody else. So it seems like it's a full belief system when really it's a really flat, one-dimensional system. I'm mixing metaphors. I should really check in with you guys. Once you guys start getting me rolling, I just roll and roll and roll. I really appreciate you all showing up. Thank you for that one downvote. And you know what? I was mean once in a live stream, and I said there's one person thinking for themselves. But you know what? Every person that did an upvote, you think for yourselves too. We all think for ourselves. That's why we listen to me, right? I'm the person who helps you think for yourself. And you know what? I think it's a wrong maneuver. I criticize myself for critiquing labels. So I think I need to be really careful with even over critiquing intersectionality. I think a lot of things hide behind labels. I think when we start labeling things, the moment we start to label things, a blind spot occurs. And I want to keep that suspended. I think this is half of a good live stream. Maybe I'll cut it up and put the last post. Oh, Giselle! I hope you can see this again. What do you think would be a effective approach to make those students realize their biases and give up this behavior? Well, reality is not going to work for them because they're immune to reality, right? I don't want to cuss. The gosh darn professors themselves are teaching the students to slough off all responsibility. So reality itself is not going to catch up to them until it does. And I do think a lot about this. Like, what are methods of changing somebody's mind? Well, one thing that we can do is prevent people from going down this path in the first place by providing ample evidence that this is not a good path to go down. Now, like my argument on the Evergreen alumni page, like there's just some people who's like, they cannot see outside of their rubric, right? And that anybody who disagrees with them is either has internalized white supremacy or they're a white male, right? So either a white male or you want to be a white male. And that's the only reason that you would ever not see things my way. And those people are completely, there's no way that I could reach them. And plus, who the fuck cares about Facebook? You can just be whoever you want and say whatever you want. There's no real life consequences to having an argument on Facebook. So there's no real skin in the game there until it starts leaching out more and more in public life. And that's why what we need to do is support and find creators who are developing novel ways of looking at things and speaking of things, not just ideas, not just conceptions, right? But modes of interaction, right? Interaction is the key. It's not just, I know the answer, so I'm going to go around and replicate this answer over and over and over again. It's a more nimble way of interacting with any given input in the world. You have a toolkit that you draw from, a toolkit of patterns that you can recognize and stuff like that. I don't know if I'm making any sense, but what we need to find and uplift are people who can engage with the world and with other people in ways that are much more fun, enlightening, and not wholesome, but edifying than intersectionality. That's how we went out, really. We basically leverage the power of the marketplace of innovation, the marketplace of psychic innovation, the psychic marketplace, right? We don't need to take away their mind share. We just provide larger spaces in which to roam with one another. I really think that, and that's an incredibly vague, probably completely useless way of framing the entire argument. Una, everyone is made wrong and wronger. Tearing everything down into smaller shreds can only end in a pile of refuse. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Keep yourselves on the bright side. I hope you guys have a good weekend. I hope you guys do something lovely. I hope you guys do something lovely. I have a lot of work to do. I got to clean the kitchen now and figure out what's for dinner. But I do have a lot of work to do. Thank you guys for being a part of my channel. Hopefully me and Elswood will do a live stream this weekend. She said she has time. And then I'm fishing for more people to interview while I work on these things. As ever, you guys, if you guys have any stories or any leads or anybody that you guys want me to interview, ping me on Facebook, or don't ping me on freaking Facebook. Facebook sucks. Ping me on Twitter, or just leave comments and stuff. I'm always looking for some things. I need to offload me roaming around and looking for people to interview right now so I can focus on this project. I try to average about 15 episodes per month, and I banged out a whole bunch at the beginning of this month. So I feel like I'm ahead, but I always feel like I'm behind. Anyhow, I'm gonna slish away. I'm gonna slish out. If I was smart, I would have had a video to leave you guys with. But let's see if I have a video that I'll leave you guys with. Oh, look. Okay, cool. Let's leave you guys with the video. Stand by. Stand by. Stand by. Stand by. One moment. Nested in all these things. I know there's a movie here to share with you. Oh, no, you already saw that one. You already saw that one. Oh, this is a good one. Okay, so we go over here. Wait, movie, choose file. Here we go.